being here. Today we're going to talk about getting to and from the airport in Italy. So, as you might imagine, I don't know that it's really this way in the States. It doesn't feel like it. But in Italy, the airports were very far away from where I wanted to be in a particular city. So I'm in Atlanta. That's where I live, and it just feels like the airport is so close by. Maybe it's just a perception thing. The airport is very close to the city, um, so it just doesn't feel like it's the same. When we flew into Rome, the airport was an hour from the historic part of town where we were staying. It was a very long ride. And I don't know that I really investigated that well before we left. If I had, I might have done things a little bit differently. And then when we left, we flew out of Milan to come back home. And again, the airport was a good 40 minutes or more from where we were staying in town. So the airport is pretty significant in distance. We're going to Venice soon, and this time I actually have done the research on getting from the airport to the city, and I know that it can be a substantial trip from the airport to where we're staying in Venice proper. So you need to do a little bit of investigating of that before you go. How far is my hotel from this airport? Now, I wouldn't have changed my hotel to be near the airport. I wanted to be in the middle of things. But what I would have done differently is I probably would have arranged a ride before I left here. Um, as it was, we weren't quite sure when we got off the plane how we were getting to where we needed to go. Our options were train, taxi, shuttle buses, private driver. So all of those things were options, but we hadn't really thought through which one we were going to do. I think I somehow had this thinking that the train station was going to be right there. It was going to be easy to hop on the train and get to the city, and it wasn't apparent the way I expected it to be apparent. So we wandered outside, and we were, anxious to get where we needed to go, and we were looking for the place where the ride share would do pickup. We wanted to find the place where the ride share was before we tried to call an Uber. And we were walking around and we were looking for it, and we saw signs, and we walked in what we thought was the right direction, and then we got outside and we didn't see any more signs, and we could not find the ride share pickup point because in a lot of the airports it's restricted as to where the ride share people can come. So we could not find the rideshare location, so we didn't call an Uber. And then while we were looking around, there were people running around asking people who looked lost like us if they needed a ride. And I assumed that, before I get to that though, so there was a taxi stand there, but there was a very long line of people waiting to queue up to get a taxi. Um, it just, we didn't want to wait that long. So we looked at the line and we were discouraged by that. And while we were actually looking at the line and contemplating that, there were these people running around asking if you needed a ride, if you looked bewildered and not unsure of yourself. So this one lady, I just I didn't know what she was selling. I wasn't interested. It made me a little uncomfortable. And so I kept walking a little bit. And then there was this guy. He looked quintessential Italian. And he was dressed to the nines, very stylishly dressed. And he asked us if we needed a ride. And he was just hustling. He was a private driver hustling for, people to take to where they needed to go. Now, I did have the advantage that I knew how much it should cost to get from the airport to where we were going. So I knew what the ride should cost. I just hadn't really investigated how to arrange that, when to arrange that a little more specifically. So he told us how much it would cost, and I knew that that price was fair. So at a minimum, you need to know how much it should cost you to get from where you are to where you need to go so that you don't get scammed. Now, if I had to do over again, I probably wouldn't have chosen this guy because he looked perfect. His car, But by the time we followed him like 5 minutes out to the parking lot where the cars were, it's like, I'm not going back inside. It's just like we walked out into an oven. It was really hot. I'm like, okay, we're just going to do it. So we hopped in his car. It wasn't a terrible car, but whenever I see a dent in a car that is for hire, I'm like, I'm a little nervous about this. And he was a crazy driver. But you know what? All the Italians were. Everybody that we saw, not just him, everybody, all the other cars that we were encountering as we were traveling down the road towards our airport, they all drove like maniacs. So be prepared for that as well. Say a prayer, do your genuflect, and hop in the car and go. We were smart enough to arrange our ride in advance on the way out. We had our hotel, our concierge, arrange for a driver for us, and there were 4 of us, so we did a private drive or private car, and that was fine. For our upcoming trip to Venice, I know I've done my research this time, and I know that the airport is far away from Venice proper. So you have several options, and I've investigated them all, and I've already decided what I'm going to do. So your options are a private water taxi from the airport directly to the city. That's the fastest. There's a shuttle bus that goes from the airport around to the train station, and you can ride the train in. There are public water transportation options, the Vaporetti. It's like a big city bus, but it's on water. And those can take 50 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on which one you catch. And normally I would say being on a boat is great, except that there are very few outside seats, and there's no air conditioning on the inside, and it's extremely hot. So I am not doing that this time. I think that's a perfectly fine option, and we did the Vaporetti a lot, but for such a long distance, I don't think I want to be cooped up inside with no AC for that long. So we're going to do one of the private water taxis from the airport straight to our hotel. So definitely check out transportation from your airport to wherever you're trying to go, because that's not necessarily as intuitive and as easy as you might think. So get this scoop before you go, so you know what you're doing and you know what to look for. Hope you found this helpful, and I hope you will hit the like and subscribe so that you see all our episodes, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao.